What up, what up, what up? How's it going, homies? So yeah. Here we are. We didn't get to go live yesterday because it was the holiday weekend, and we're just doing our best over here, as should you. So yeah, what I'm excited about is talking about Aries, talking about what the fuck is Neptune? Because let's be real, the outer planets were like, what? Maybe all the planets. I don't judge. But Neptune for sure is kind of like this nice little ambiguous planet I want to talk about. And also retrograde. Retrograde, the Gatorade. Like, what is that and how should we be approaching it? And the reason why all three of these things I want to talk about a little bit is because we've got Neptune in Aries in retrograde right now. And we're also going to talk about, I don't know if you have gone down the rabbit hole that I have of trying to figure out why is Neptune in Aries going back into Pisces and then going back into Aries again for 13 years. Like, what? I don't, what? How did that work? So, if that was confusing to you as it was to me, then we're going to break that down as easily and simply as possible, okay? Which is basically a matter of perception, which is kind of what we're talking about with Neptune, which is kind of like why, all the rigmarole. But yeah, I'm not in the greatest, physical presentation state right now, so I apologize for that. We are starting to move. We're starting a move imminently. So this week we're packing boxes. We're going to be moving into a new house. It's going to be a lot of work. I'm very excited. I'm in this weird, like, diametrically opposing place, which is like super excited, super grateful, super humbled. And then on the other side, I'm just like, what? uh, I have no energy. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. So I apologize, but this shit gets me excited. And I want to share that excitement with you. And I want to be, sort of that ability to give you some, if you're feeling a little out of whack, if you're feeling like what's going on right now energetically. I know personally I've been feeling a lot of weird emotions and feelings and just spiraling out for sure. You're not alone. You're not alone. Um, and I mean that in every sense of the word, words. You're not alone. So keep that in mind. Now, with that being said, let's talk about it a little bit. I think the easiest thing to jump into is Aries, only because, we all know Aries and we've either met an Aries, we've heard about Aries, we've talked shit about Aries. I'm an Aries. you know, these are this is a language we've encountered at some point. As always, I like to approach astrology as a very practical sort of tool set that you integrate it where it makes sense, right? And then when you're not connecting it with it, you just toss it. Just don't even, it doesn't even exist. But I like to bring it in as, hey, let's talk about these things in a little bit more practical of a sense, because we're all living life, we're all flowing through life, we're all humans, and we're all doing our best. And so talking about astrology in a way that is practical, that is approachable, and is applicable, right? Applicable is the key sentiment here. Applicable. Okay. So Aries energy, what is that? Normally, when we think of Aries, what do we think of? We think of a bossy bitch, right? Who's just, she thinks she's too big for her britches. Okay. I don't know why I said she. Probably thinking about myself. But normally, Aries is considered bossy. Hot-headed is another sort of like, I'm thinking pop astrology here. Hot-headed. I know y'all, there's some folks that are in chat, so if you guys are also feeling this, feel free to join in. But what do we think of Aries? We think of hot-headed, we think of bossy, we think of egotistical, right? Big ol' ego. We think of um, just all of these nasty sort of like, okay, you and your high horse trying to boss everybody around, do your thing, but then you don't have your shit together because you're yelling at people and you're aggressive and shit, right? I'm just diving in. Okay, so what is Aries actually? Okay. And for sure that is Aries. I like to say and exactly, Vanessa. Can I help you? Can I help you? Now, all those things are true. Those are how an Aries energy, right? It doesn't matter if Aries is a sun sign, it could be a very powerful energy in someone's chart, or it comes out under certain circumstances. So I always like to think of these as energies, right? That can have impact and can influence. So, what do we see in the Aries energy is we see opportunities for them to um, dig into these characteristics, okay? And this personality type, the bossy personality type. It's kind of the overextending of the hand. It's um, getting in where maybe you weren't invited, okay? Now that absolutely happens. It has to happen under certain circumstances, okay? But what is Aries actually? So, when we think of the signs, it's easy for us to think about their personality and forget the fact that the personality is on a journey. Okay. Personality is not one dimensional and it's not a monolith. It's an organic being and thing that grows and morphs and moves and learns and grows and then crashes and burns and then you know is born from the ashes, right? Personality is a vehicle through which that we will interact with the world. And the energy is on a journey as well. So when we look at the Aries, when we look at any sign, we may see a personality, but what we're forgetting is that they're on a journey. The Aries journey, the Aries endpoint, is ultimately to feel that rush of true, unadulterated courage. Okay. There are two words that get confused all the fucking time, and it annoys me to no end that they get confused all the time. Bravery and courage. These are two different things. Everybody likes to say, that's so brave. You're so brave. When really they mean that's so courageous. Okay. When you are scared shitless, okay, and you do it anyways, that's courage. Okay? Just hammer that into your noggin. All right? Bravery is when, and this is the easiest way to explain it, it's a scary situation and a person goes towards it, right? And they show up. It's a scary situation, objectively speaking, and the person just walks into it. Aries is good at both of these, but the end goal ultimately for Aries is to feel unadulterated courage and to know that they put themselves in that situation and that they rose above it, right? So the Aries energy wants to feel positive challenge. Okay? That's ultimately it. Is to feel positive challenge and to come out on the other side of it and say I survived, essentially. All right? So there's a chase that's happening in that. And that's why showing up, showing out has a tendency to become the leader in the group, somebody who's vocal, somebody who has an opinion, someone who is able to have the loud mouth and regret it later. It's like a delayed regretting. People who see that type of Aries energy usually have encountered unevolved Aries energy. I love that. That's exactly it. And honestly, I've definitely been an unevolved Aries. I'm still unevolved. I'm more evolved than I was. It's like, so what was this girl? Oh, somebody was like mistaking, this little kid was mistaking the sister for another sister. And he was like, and they look exactly, they all look, there's three of them. They all look exactly the same at different ages. And he was like, she got bigger. And mom was like, no, honey, that's Claire or something like that. You're thinking of so and so. And I was like, well, she is bigger. We're all bigger, right? Since the last time you saw each other, right? We're all bigger. So, just by virtue of time, we're a little more evolved. But for sure, I've been a loudmouth, opinionated, annoying little fuck. I absolutely have. And absolutely, like, completely unaware until way after the fact and going, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. I felt that, but I can't believe I said that. That's Aries, right? It's chasing that feeling, but then also at a certain point realizing, like, when does it really truly matter? When is it really a fight worth fighting? Okay. So that's Aries. What are the things that there are vehicles, right? And that's that leadership. That's that our mouth and our opinions have a tendency to be the vehicles through which we can operate in that trying to find and trying to exercise courage, right? Trying to exercise courage. And it's only until we get to the other side do we say, well, that was worth it or that wasn't worth it. And through those experiences and through those, stories, really, right? Through those stories, we learn more about ourselves, what matters to us, what's worth a fight, and what's not worth a fight. But, but that's part of the process. That's part of the journey. Okay. So it's Aries. Now, you can also have somebody who has like an Aries, and actually, let me back up for 2 seconds. So, Aries home planet, because I'm about to talk about Aries and planets. Aries home planet is Mars. And we classically like to think of Mars as like the war planet. See me blinking? I'm blinking here. We classically like to think of Mars as the war planet because that's the oversimplification and extreme version of where that planet's energy can go. In reality, Mars isn't a war planet so much as it is it like a maneuvering conflict. Okay, maneuvering conflict. This can literally be like in a conversation when you're trying to find a compromise, when you're trying to negotiate. It's kind of like it's the planet of negotiation. Okay, and what happens when you're in extreme negotiations? You go to war. So that's really Mars, is like, how do you maneuver and operate when it comes to needing to handle a negotiation? That's how I like to think of Mars. And that's Aries, right? Aries wants to have that energy of like being present, is not necessarily afraid of the combat or that conflict or a contention, right? Possible contention. A nice vertical slice of an experience of like say an evolved Aries, right? Or like a more mature Aries or a confident, and confidence is not this is not confidence. Confidence is peace in knowing oneself. That's true confidence. Okay? It's not aggressive. Confidence is not aggression. That's not true confidence. True confidence is peace. It's a sense of groundedness in knowing who you are and accepting the fact that you don't know what you don't know. That's true confidence. Okay? So, a nice vertical slice of a confident, self knowing Aries in negotiations, right, is asking questions, hearing those answers and problem solving actively, right? Talking actively, being transparent in information, trying to get to understanding the problem that you're trying to solve for, that you want to solve for, that that person wants to solve for, and what do you have to sacrifice? What do you have to create more pressure on? An Aries in a comfortable, healthy Mars position is someone who's willing to say exactly what they need, exactly what they will allow to happen, and also what they're allowing to sacrifice, but with maturity. Okay, so that's that confidence, that's that calm confidence, and also willing to hear the other side and being open to what it is that they don't know. So asking good questions, right? Asking good questions. This is also what we think of as good leaders, right? Good leaders know that they don't have all of the answers, but they have good questions. The best leaders ask the best questions. When you hear somebody ask a really good fucking question, your immediate thought should be that person can be a very good leader if they're not already in the leadership position, because that's ultimately the first quality in good leaders, is that they ask questions and they know that there's no stupid questions, okay? Only stupid reactions to questions. So when somebody asks a question, I go, it's like, how dare you? Someone is asking a question that means that they don't understand. Let's get into it. Where did that question come from? If it's confusing as to why that question came up, right? There is a curiosity and there is a wanting to get into it attitude. Why? Because that Aries energy is on a journey to find the fight that is worth it, right? Finding the moment that is worth that courageous moment, that courageous action. And then, was it worth it? Was it not worth it? What did I learn about myself? Okay, so that's Aries, all right? That's Aries. Now, Aries in any planet is going to create this natural sense of tension because what? Right? That planet of Mars, negotiation, right? So immediately coming to a head of like, what is the thing? Getting into it. So if somebody has an Aries and Mercury, right, how they talk can feel very direct. But why? Because they're willing to meet the moment. Okay? They're looking for, what is that? What, right? They're ready to be courageous. They're looking for that. That's ultimately their end goal, right? If they have, we'll say Venus in Aries. Venus is a planet, and we like to think of it as a relationship planet. Venus is a planet of balance, how we find balance in ourselves, right? It's how we find release or joy or peace or whatever it is that we need, but it creates a whole sense of self when we're experiencing that. So, if someone has an Aries and Venus, so what is that going to look like? That's somebody who is willing to take risks, right? Who's willing to take risks for relationships, for love, for work, for, platonic relationships, for friendships, for whatever, right? They're willing to meet the moment. Okay. Now, there's Neptune. We're going to get into Neptune. But because Neptune is such an interesting planet, I want to talk about retrograde real quick, because retrograde, and then when we get into Neptune, it all kind of come together. So retrograde, you can think of all these planets. We have these easy ideas of like what they mean, what they are. And then retrograde happens. And we all get scared. We all run! Run for the hills. Retrograde. Easy sentiment, everything goes to shit. But why do we feel like everything goes to shit? Because when we think of something as it is, gets flipped on its head. And what happens when something gets flipped on its head? Now, literally, the blood is flowing to places where it doesn't normally naturally go. Okay? So there's a redistribution of flow that's happening. And that creates a tremendous sense of unease. What is actually happening in the planets, even though we think they're like, oh, it's moving backwards. It's not. It's not moving backwards. Retrograde doesn't mean it's actually moving back. It just means that it's hitting the part of its orbit where it looks like it's slowing down, when actually it's just at a part of its orbit where maybe we're speeding up faster. And it's just, right? So it looks like it's slowing down, but it's actually going at its normal speed. But because of where we are in our orbit and where they are in their orbit and all that, it looks like it's going backwards. Okay? So that's retrograde. But that has an effect on us. That has an effect on us. Because it's not going with us. It's not going in that normal vibe, that normal flow. Now it's slowing down. It's not at the same alignment. Okay? So what does that force us to do? When everything goes to shit, what does that force us to do? It forces us to see what it is that isn't being handled. A perfect example of this in practicality, in real life, is like when someone goes on vacation from work. Okay? When someone goes on vacation from work, you see the value of that person. You see the value of that person. And when they're there and they're doing all the things and keeping all them, right? It's like, oh, this is great. All these systems work. All these systems work. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Ba, 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 right? But then that person leaves. And if they don't have, and this, I mean, yes, there's absolutely situations where everything's like perfectly handled. There's no issues. It's totally fine. But there's always something. Why? Because naturally a piece of the puzzle has left. So whether it's a question, whether it's a this or that or the other thing, but you get to see how well things are functioning when that component is not there. Okay? How tight and how organized are your actual systems? And when retrograde hits, whether it's our relationships, whether it's our goals, whether it's our friendships, our house, our job, whatever it is, we start to see what it is that we're really working with and what might need some attention. It's also, I mean, in reality, there's always things in our lives that are not going to be fixed. Trauma is forever. Okay? I hate to tell you that. Trauma is forever. The difference is how we handle it and how well equipped we are when we get triggered. That's it. That's it. Healing is only a sense of growth that we have in integrating that truth into who we are. And when you are more accepting of that truth, when you get triggered, you still get triggered, but you handle it just a little bit differently than the last time maybe, or how you did 10 years ago. Okay? But you get to see what you're working with. Retrograde, it's the same thing. When retrograde hits and shit hits the fan, you see where you're at. And that is a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing because there is only information and data and truth when retrograde happens. Another thing about retrograde is, that has a tendency to happen, is things kind of come back to you. I know a big thing about retrogrades, they say, don't start new blah, right? Don't start new things, new contracts or whatever during that period of time. But actually, what I also love about retrograde is, again, so healing, right? What doesn't work. So all these things are getting revisited. Things are coming back into your life. Themes that you were like, I'm moving on from that, are like right in front of you. And you're like, what the fuck? That's what happens when retrograde happens, right? It's like, oh my God, why is this a problem right now? I thought I dealt with this already, right? It's revisiting. But not just shitty things can come back to us. Wonderful things. Ideas, projects maybe that you put on the back burner that are actually good for you, that are actually like, hey, you like doing this, right? You're not starting a new project, you're reintegrating a new idea or you're reintegrating an old idea, an old project that you've been tussling around in your mind, you've been thinking about, and now it's back in your life. Okay? So, different retrogrades, different objectives. Okay, but ultimately we have this knowledge that retrograde, yes, it sucks when shit hits the fan. But like I say, when you hit rock bottom, it's like falling on the floor. You realize, oh my God, there's the pen cap I lost. Right? You see what it is that you're working with. Okay? So that's retrograde. So even though we're like, oh my God, it's Gatorade, it's a time to be open. Okay? It's a time to be open in general, regardless of what planet it is in. And some retrogrades don't even affect people. It's normally a good thing. Okay? If we're going to go for good, better, best, or whatever these superlatives, right? It's cool, right? It's like, okay, you're doing your thing. Keep doing your thing. But whenever it feels like truly shit is hitting the fan, and it's like, what the fuck? Just think of it as an opportunity. It's really just an opportunity for you to get reacquainted with yourself and where you're at with certain things, right? I know, like with Mercury retrograde, it's really an information planet. We call it communication planet, but it's really about data and how information moves and changes and whatever, right? Like computers can go to shit and things are taking forever to connect, or your phone is acting weird or whatever, right? Ask yourself, what is the opportunity for me here in the midst of this tomfoolery? Right? It's what the feeling that's being brought up, right? Maybe has to do with work because you're like, I'm trying to get into the Zoom meeting, and now this is happening, what the fuck, right? It's a moment for you to be like, work is really stressing me out. Why is work stressing me out so much? And that's a whole packet of pickles to unpack, okay? Packet of pickles. I just came up with that. Now that's that. Now, the next opportunity, of course, is looking at what planet it's in, what sign it's in. Now we come to Neptune. Aries in Neptune in retrograde. What the fuck? Oh my God. So, Neptune. What is Neptune? Neptune is such a delightfully mysterious planet to me anyways. But like most of the outer planets, like we have such, I think, a grasp, or at least like a superficial grasp of the inner planets. It's easy for us to be like, oh, Venus, love, right? Or Mars, war, right? As we just talked about earlier. those are oversimplifications, but we have a grasp of them. Neptune, the fuck? You don't just hear Neptune and go, word. No, we really don't. It's more of an explanation, which I'm about to get into. It's a philosophy, and that's kind of Neptune. All right, it's you're getting into very intangible areas here. So what is Neptune? My favorite astrologer, Stephen Forrest with two R's. He's my favorite, but I don't know his name. Stephen Forrest. He says it like this: Neptune is the decentralization of the ego. Decentralization of the ego. Man's a poet. Man's a poet, and I bet you he know it. Decentralization of the ego. Neptune to me is the most sort of spiritually correct planet, or like the most closest to what we think of as spirituality in a planet. When I think of spirituality, when I think of the essence of what it means to be spiritual and all this, that, and the other thing, the highest power, the highest good, right? Really, it's about divine truth. And what is divine truth? Divine truth is no stories. No stories, right? Divine truth is no stories. There's a modality called theta healing, which I got a certification in eons ago. And I haven't gotten recertified, so I'm not an expert to Vienna Stibel's qualifications. But one thing that I love that taught me was about this thing called the seventh plane, which is ultimately ultimate divine truth. And that is where there are no stories. We do not tell ourselves any stories on that plane. It is just unconditional love and pure divine creative energy, which is very cool, right? And if we're going to go into that zone, it's a very cool place to be. There's a lot of power in being in that place. But there's a very important acceptance that must also happen on the spiritual journey, which is acceptance of the self. It's an impossible task. It's an impossible task, because what we're ultimately asking ourselves as humans is to be aware that there is a place where no stories exist, while also accepting the fact that we are humans living a storyful life, a storyful existence. It's very yin and yang. So how do we marry those two? And on the quest of, divine spirituality and just exposure to what spirituality is, there is become this thing people call ascension, right? Ascension. I'm going to hurt a lot of people's feelings right now. Ascension is bullshit. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I did, but let me just explain. Okay, so ascension is this idea. It's escapism. Ascension is escapism. And as humans, going through and trying to parse through all this information of how to become enlightened individuals and how to become more loving and accepting and all this, right? We come to these words: nirvana, divine connection, unconditional love. These are all words, right? The the true act of integrating divine spirituality is accepting ourselves while also accepting the part of ourselves that is Neptune. And that part of ourselves is that divine truth, is that place of no stories. Okay? That's Neptune. That's that place where no stories exist. It exists. It's just divine truth. And the best way to visualize this is what it means, what it truly means to be to embody the place of no stories. If you are to embody that, you become the witness. That's it. You are simply the witness. It means that you can see, you can be exposed to, but you do not integrate anything as something to have an opinion on, something to be a part of. You simply accept it as it is, which is actually unconditional love. And that's something that in the spiritual journey, we get really fucked up in ourselves, which is, how do I unconditionally love? How do I become unconditionally loving? And we get fucked up about this word love because we think love means to embrace, right? To embrace, which is a form of integration, okay? But we do not need to actively embrace to integrate. Integration is the acceptance and allowance, and that is all. That is divine truth. That is the state of being. That is true state of nirvana. That's a true state of nirvana. That's the true state of decentralization of the ego. That is Neptune. Okay? Now you can understand why we're like, what Neptune, what? Because it's a little complicated, right? But it's a place of no ego. But why is this an impossible place? Because even though we can be in the state of the witness, right? We can be in the state of the witness. We cannot perpetually forever exist as the witness. We, as people, as humans, are forced to live our lives, which means what? We need to make choices. We need to maneuver and operate in a world of choices, which means what? Stories. So again, this dichotomy, right? There's this beautiful place, no stories, right? But what's the reality? We all have a story, and that is divine. Because it proves there is no right, there is no wrong. There's only the experience. There's only truly us trying to do our best. Our best. And this whole concept is decentralization of the ego, right? The ego. Well, guess what? We all have ego. We all have ego. And to embark on a journey where you try to get rid of your ego, you literally quit life. Okay? If you get rid of your ego, then, and to each their own, you ready to be a monk? You ready to live out your life apart from living a life? Okay. And that's okay. Again, to each their own. But that is a very, very, very specific thing. There's healthy ego and there's unhealthy ego. Ultimately, what we want is to have a healthy ego. What does that mean? It means that you understand that you are unique. You understand and know and accept that you are unique, but so is everyone else. That's a healthy ego. That's a healthy ego. You understand and accept that you are unique, and so is everyone else. All right? So that's that. Now, again, back to Neptune. Decentralization of the ego, becoming the witness, becoming one with oneness. All right? And now we got it in Aries. What? Aries is the complete opposite of Neptune. And why is that even more so like hitting the nail on the head is because what sign is actually at home in Neptune is Pisces. It's the end of the zodiac. And what's the beginning of the zodiac? Aries. So you've got also kind of this weird Ouroboros snake eating itself energy happening with between Aries and Neptune, right? It's weird rebirth and death happening. And now we're going to, right on top of it, put this retrograde. But let me back up. So, Neptune is decentralization of the ego, being the witness, not integrating, allowing and accepting and, right? How did we explain Aries? Meeting the moment. That's how we explain Aries. Meeting the moment, having courage, finding the moment to express courage. Well, that's a mindfuck. So how are we supposed to operate? In a healthy situation, healthy being, we'll say all is well, no major contention, and we're not in retrograde. Okay. That would be finding, it's actually beautiful because Neptune is in the mind, right? Neptune is in the mind, and Aries has a tendency, has a strength in the mouth and the hands and the legs and the body, right? The action. That's Aries. So in essence, it's the perfect completion point when it's direct. If we can have Neptune in Aries and no major squares or weird shit that's bad aspects, right? Bad, good, better, best, whatever. But contention, if there's no contention, Neptune in Aries is actually a beautiful marriage. Why? Because it's literally the human experience. It's the human experience. It's the knowing that there's a place and an energy that says you are allowed to be the witness and you can be the witness and you don't have to integrate. You don't have to make every story about you, right? There's that energy with the completion of, and when I choose, I will be in this awareness. When I choose to speak, when I choose to act, when I choose to ask a question, when I choose to fight for something, I will still be in my awareness, right? I will still be in my awareness that there is a divine place where stories do not exist. And really what that is a balanced person. That's a balanced person. Because what do we want from our leaders, right? What do we want from our leaders? We want them to go to bat for us. We want them to speak truth. And we want them to ask good questions, right? We also want them to be grounded. We want them to have an acceptance of the fact that they don't know everything. We need humility in leaders. Leaders, people who understand that they may be in a special position because they are unique. But Joe Schmo down the street is also in a special position because he's the only plumber in his neighborhood that people call, right? It's knowing that everyone is unique and that we all have a role and we all have aspirations, that we all have goals, that we're all leading equally important lives. And the only difference is that that leader has a responsibility that involves coordinating and being productive with information or whatever, right? But that everyone is ultimately also unique and important. Okay? So that's what we want. So that's a healthy, beautiful Neptune and Aries. Okay. All right. Cool. Guess what? It's in retrograde. So what does that mean? Right? So what we talked about earlier with retrograde, everything gets turned on its ass and you see what you're working with. So what are we working with? If Neptune is in Aries right now, what we may be experiencing is being put in positions that make us very uncomfortable when it comes to, could be your life, your work, your relationships. But if it's Neptune in Aries, and Neptune is in retrograde, right? You are being asked to understand two things. Two things. One, you're being asked to understand that all truth is subjective. All truth is subjective. And your truth is not the only truth that exists. In fact, there's a place where there is nothing. There's no stories. And your concept of truth it doesn't even matter. Okay? That's one. All truth is subjective. And two, that you are just as unique and full of purpose as everyone else. Okay? So, where are you struggling in? Are you struggling in identifying and parsing through story and what truths people are telling you or what you're telling other people? Or are you struggling in understanding your purpose or even other people's purpose? Okay? Where are you struggling? That's the two things that Neptune in Aries retrograde could be asking you. Okay? And if not, then sweet beans and just move the fuck on. Hi, Cottage Country. Thank you for asking. I'm not doing readings on this stream, but if you do want to schedule with me, I have my little link at the bottom. It's schedulewithpilar.com. You can see my options there. Okay. and super easy to sign up for a reading. Okay, so that's that's the energy right now. If you're feeling that, if you're feeling that push and pull, or you're coming to crazy, you're like, that's it, I've spiraled out, right? I can't do this anymore. I need to change my career, right? My purpose. What is my purpose? That is that Neptune in Aries and retrograde can be applying a lot of pressure right now on you. Again, but it might not too. And the reason why is because, again, you're dealing with retrograde is all about what are you working with, right? It's when you get slapped in the face, how are you going to react? We got shit to work through? Am I going to fight you? Or am I going to sit there and ask questions? Both could be good answers, but the point is that you're going to learn about yourself and where you're at. That's it. Okay, cool. Now we're going to unpack this whole fucking Neptune in Aries, then back in Pisces, but back in Aries for 13 years? Like, what the... Okay, so I was explaining about retrograde and what retrograde actually is, and it's like this... Looks like it's slowing down. It's not slowing down. It's just about where it's at in its orbit, and we're going at our regular speed, and maybe we're closer now, so now we're going faster. We're closer to it, so it maybe is now, we're just moving past it quicker, but it's because perspective has changed, essentially, in the distances of the orbiting planets. All right? So, with that being said, to us, from where we are, because that's what astrology is, well, Western astrology, okay, is from the perspective of Earth. Now, from the perspective of Earth, Neptune came out of Pisces, and only very recently, like July, and the outer planets, when they're in a sign, it's like forever. It feels like forever, okay? So Neptune has been in Pisces for the last, I don't know, probably 13 years, right? Because we're just about to start Aries, and Aries is going to be in, Neptune is going to be in Aries for 13 years. So I think the cycle is 13 years. So with that being said, because it was just moving into Aries, which means it's at the very beginning of the Aries constellation, all right? And then it went into retrograde. It started to slow down. So now from our perspective, it went back into Pisces. So that's why it's going to be back in Pisces in October until December, right? From October until December, okay? So for 2 months, it's going to be back in Pisces. It's going to go direct. And then it's going to be on a regular alignment. Well, I do this. It doesn't mean that it's lining up with us. It just means that it's at its regular station and going at its normal speed that we're, used to. Okay, cool. Then it goes back into Aries. So it's cool. We get to kind of again, it's like a retro on a retro because, again, what is retro? It's revisiting. We're revisiting old energies, or we're revisiting stuff we need to unpack with ourselves. So if we're going Aries retrograde, right? Leadership, purpose, all that jazz. Then we go direct. Now now all of a sudden we're in Pisces. Now we're direct. What is Pisces? Pisces is at home in Neptune. So for 2 months, it's like we're going to go back to basics. Because what are the basics? The very basics are, what are we born with? I mean, Well, arguably, but we're born with no story. We're just newborn baby. Of course, there's a philosophy. You've got your genetic material, you've got your genetic lineage, genetic stories, you have your spiritual story, like, in terms of your past lifetimes, if you believe in that, right? So you can come in with baggage, for sure. But as a human, you're a clean slate. Baby, right? Hence, baby. Right? The beginning. Okay. So that's going back to basics. So Neptune going back to Pisces is an opportunity to go back to basics. So there's going to be an opportunity between October to December, especially when there's, like, I would say, the densest time of storytelling, because why? Holidays, right? So you've got Halloween, you got Thanksgiving, then you've got Christmas, right? And then you got New Year's. This is stories on stories on stories on stories. Because what do? We all get together and we all talk shit. Maybe not. Maybe not. But you talk, right? You're all talking about, oh, what have I been doing? What have I done? In that time, you're gonna be like so inundated. And maybe not. This energy may not hit you that hard. But for some people it's gonna be harder, for some people it's gonna be easier, for some people, I don't know, you're gonna fucking notice. But it may be a time where you get so inundated with stories or just something about the energy and the clicking and whatever, you just go, you almost disassociate, right? You start to disassociate from the stories because you're surrounded by it. So you start to disassociate. The unhealthy version of Pisces is, and the unhealthy version, I would say, of spirituality. Okay. Love talking about this shit. So, is when it's like we go so far into not having stories that we actually convince ourselves that we have no story, but really we're creating a story about how we have no stories. What am I talking about? This circle, this weird fucking word labyrinth of words. It's spiritual narcissism. It's spiritual narcissism. When it becomes weaponized, right? When we start to look at, oh, well, that's a story. Well, that's a story you're telling yourself. Oh, well, you're clearly unaligned, right? Now we're telling the story of ourselves being spiritual, right? It starts to eat itself, the Ouroboros again, right? A healthy Pisces and a healthy Neptune, because Pisces is known for their stories as well, it's about the joy, appreciating. Again, it's the balance. It's understanding that there's that place. No stories. All stories are objective, or all truths are subjective, right? Everybody has their own experience. But also, Pisces is about the externalization of what goes on in the mind. So that's why it's like you see a lot of Pisces. Sometimes they have very good at telling stories, or they become writers, or they're artists. It's because they're very interested in that, in the subjectivity of experience and how to speak on that and how to experience that and how to understand it and move through it, right? It's very woo, right? Very cool. Very cool. It's great. Depending on your personality, you might be like, oh my God. Feel a little grounded, shall we? Okay. The fish. Pisces is a fish. Those fishy fish, right? It's like, pick a topic. Just stay there. Just stay there and stop talking for a second. Yeah, no, it's all a journey. But what happens? So those 2 months, Neptune goes back into Pisces. It's a time for us to appreciate and also maybe disassociate all the stories, how you interpret, how you experience that. How you move through it is, again, there's no right or wrong, but it will be according to your experience. And then what happens? We move right back into Aries because, again, planets moving and shit. So we move back into Aries. Well, to us, from our perspective, right, where we see it lining up with, looks like it's going back, goes into Pisces, and then it goes direct. So now it goes at the right pace, and then, or the right pace, our pace, and then as it's now it's moving back into Aries and it's direct. And then December, Neptune goes back into Aries. It's staying there for 13 years. 13 years. Oh my God. 13 years of Neptune in Aries. And like I said, Neptune in Aries is asking two things of you. To understand that all truth is subjective. All truth is subjective. And two, that you are unique and you are special. And so is everyone around you. These are the two things. And when these are combined, and for 13 years, just a side note, 13 years, you are going to have an opportunity to really step into your, and I hate to sound like a cliche, step into your power and your purpose. And there's a lot of shit happening in the world. There's a lot of shit always happening in the world, unfortunately. But because of where we're at in the technology age and where you're at and where other people are at, but because everything has got its own push and pull and everyone, again, is still going through their own experience. But Neptune in Aries, especially for those who are born with Neptune in Aries, I am really, really excited for those babies, because those are people that when they grow up, they are going to have this beautiful balance of knowing these two very important things that we are going to be learning, right? Because just because Neptune is in Aries doesn't mean like, oh, I get it. It's a journey. We're all like trying to understand and integrate these lessons. But they will be born knowing these two things, which is that all truth is subjective and that everyone is fucking special. And that's pretty fucking cool. And not to say maybe they don't realize it off the bat, because, kids all have like a shitty stage. But speaking as someone who has 3 kids, but it's going to be right there. That seed is going to have all the right nutrients and sunlight and water that it needs to just grow without contention and all of these lessons that we're ultimately going to be going through for the next 13 years, which is trying to integrate that fact that we can show up in our power, that we can support others, that we can be the witness, that we are allowed to shine in our talents, that we are allowed to shine in our talents, and that we are allowed to accept other people's successes. We are allowed to accept that bad shit happens because good shit can come out of it. We are allowed to accept that we can move through situations without attaching all of the baggage to us. That's going to be the lesson for us for the next 13 years. Okay? So there you go. Boom. I don't know why I did that. But yeah, so that's what I got for you. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that. This will be posted on YouTube. This will be on Twitch for however long it exists. If you do want to schedule with me, I got my link there, schedule with Pilar. And my schedule is up to date, so there shouldn't be any issues there. Super easy peasy, lemon a la squeezy. And yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. My channel on YouTube, Pilar Lyutfalieva, is you know, I myself, I am a personal and professional coach. In my toolkit, you know, I happen to be a master channeler, whatever. And I have a special interest in astrology. This is fun shit for me. And I believe that we should be curious constantly and always. And since this is my special interest, I like sharing it with you guys. Also, with the full integration of what it means to be living life, making decisions, being humans that are ultimately doing our best, absolute best. Always, always. I've been friends with felons, sex workers, priests. The moral spectrum, guess what? We're all doing our best with what we got. And rarely does it look pretty. Rarely does it look pretty. But that's it. That's why we're here, right? Because we're all doing our best. So there you go. I love you all. You're amazing. You're awesome. You are perfect. You're perfect. And you fucking got this. All right? All right. All right. Sweet beans. Happy Tuesday. Have a great rest of your week. And I'll see you next